Hello everyone, Mr. Mark here, and I know it's been a super long time that I've made a video, but I just had to address Trump's tariffs. I am so frustrated. How can the most powerful man in the world, the leader of the United States, the so-called leader of the free world, be so dumb and implement these tariffs that make absolutely no sense? In this video, I want to talk, first of all, maybe what is a tariff, then why is Trump doing it? And finally, why I think it's really dumb. They could work sometimes, tariffs are not always bad, but the way he does it makes literally no sense. So let me explain all of those things right now. First of all, what is a tariff? So a tariff is a tax on things you buy from abroad. So a country can say if you buy a product from the EU market, for example, from the EU, you have to pay 20%. This is the tariff that Trump has implemented for the EU. So he has used that in this example. For example, if a BMW costs $10 on the EU market, it will become $12 right now on the US market because of the 20% tariff. So if you want to buy goods from abroad, you have to pay extra. And Trump has done this for almost all countries in the world, varying tariffs, a base minimum level of 10%. Most countries have maybe 20, some even have 50%. So for all products right now that you buy from abroad in the US, you have to pay at least 10% extra. So why does he do that? Why does he make everything you buy from abroad more expensive? Well, one of the first, I think the most important reason is that he wants people to buy more American products. So let's talk about a BMW again. It costs now $12 on the US market. Maybe Ford has a similar car, and that is only $10 on the US market. So the consumer will think like, that is much cheaper. I will buy a Ford instead of a BMW. American companies will make more money, and that is good for the American economy. That is what Trump thinks. This can work sometimes, definitely not for all products, and I'll dive into that in a second, but this is, I think, his most important argument. Make America great again. America first. You need to buy American products. So that's reason number one. And reason number two is that he wants to bring manufacturing back to America, that he wants more factories again in the States. So, for example, BMW is like, oh no, the US is such an important market. We have now our factories in Germany. But because of this, we will also start a factory in the US or move all our production to the US. Then we can avoid the 20% and still sell BMWs for $10. That is the second reason. What is then the third reason is that the American government gets more money. So that $12, the new price, two of that, because of the tariff, goes straight to the US government. So who pays it? It's the companies who import cars. If you are a car dealership in the US and you import BMWs, you are paying that. And of course, he's going to charge part of that to the customer, maybe not everything. Maybe he takes a little bit of his profit, but for sure it will increase the price because the car dealership or the Walmart or any shop has to make up for that extra tax. But it goes to the US government. So Trump thinks this way I will make a lot of money and maybe then I can lower taxes on income, etc. That's his other thought. Then, finally, why does he do it? Money and power. He wants to make better deals with other countries and he's now kind of bullying them, putting super crazy high tariffs on everyone so they will come to him, bow down and make a deal. That's what he thinks. So maybe they will get better trade deals and maybe he can hurt his enemies. So China, it's on the top of the list, on the top of that chart he had. It's a big enemy. So maybe if we punish China very hard, 54%, their economy will be really hurt and we can get more powerful. So it's a way to kind of pressure people into making better deals with the US, get them to the negotiating table. Trump says he's the master of the deal, the art of the deal. So that's another reason. Then, finally, and I think this is maybe even the most important thing, in Trump's mind, he thinks that any trade deficit is not fair. So what is a trade deficit? Is if a country buys sells more to the US than it buys, then there is a negative trade with that country. Trump thinks it's really bad that like, oh, you give away money. But of course you get something in return. It's not like you give away the money. So for example, I put here Switzerland, US. If the US buys chocolate from from Switzerland, it gets chocolate and it gives $5 to Switzerland. Maybe Switzerland doesn't want any American products, so they don't buy anything. So then the balance is -5. Trump thinks this is super unfair, but what just happened is that Americans got chocolate instead of dollars. And that's how trade works. So a negative balance doesn't mean some country is screwing another country, like as he said. It just means it's just unfair for him, but it's just a deal. Like you want chocolate, so you pay the price, you pay that chocolate. Yeah, I'm already getting a bit worked up by this, but this is really in Trump's mind. That's why also how they calculated it. He thinks a negative balance, trade balance with another country is bad, but that's not always the case. So more reasons that might be already the first why it's a bit dumb, but let's talk about all the reasons why it makes no sense and why it is dumb. First of all, inflation. So prices will go up 100% guaranteed. Why is that the case? So let's talk about that car again. So Trump thought, okay, people will now buy an American car. They pay now $10. They will pay $10 for a Ford. It was already $10. The BMW is now $12. Prices won't go up because people will just buy that same car, that Ford, which was already $10. But no car in the US is fully American made. Almost no product in the US is fully American made. Some parts come from abroad. Some of the ingredients of products come abroad. Some kind of resources they use to produce things come from abroad. So because of the global supply lines, making products will get more expensive. Parts of the product become more expensive, so the product itself becomes more expensive. So for sure, that will raise the prices of a Ford car. But also, even if that doesn't go up and Ford says, hey, there's a $12 for BMW, Ford is 10, why not add an extra dollar? Why not get that extra profit and we're still cheaper than BMW? So Ford will just make a bigger profit margin. So anyway, there will be inflation. Prices will go up 100% guaranteed. And Trump said on day one, I'm going to bring inflation down. And now he's doing the opposite. So that is really dumb, makes no sense. Second thing, you can just move factories. He wants factories to move to the US, but this is a process that takes years to build, years to get that factory running. You need to hire people, you need to train people, you need to change all the supply lines. It's not going to be in a couple of months, it's going to be years. And in all those years, there will be higher prices because people have to buy it from abroad. And then finally, some factories. Why did we move all the factories to Vietnam and Cambodia and China and the Philippines? Because labor is super cheap. Some people, I know it's very unfair, but they make $1 per hour. I don't think Americans are going to work for $1 per hour. So they will have to pay $15 per hour, $10 per hour. Anyway, the labor costs are going to go up by 10 times or 20 times. And all of that, the consumer in the end has to pay. So again, this will raise inflation and be very bad for the US economy. Then, why is it also dumb? A lot of things, well, maybe not so many, but there are a couple of things that are just unavailable in the US. You cannot even grow it or produce it in the US. So, for example, coffee. He put a lot of tariffs on Indonesia. But for example, coffee is a major export product of Indonesia. So why do you tariff Indonesia if you just want cheap coffee or you don't want cheap coffee? I don't know what is the reasoning behind that. But coffee you can only make a little bit on Hawaii, but definitely not enough to give the whole of America their favorite beverage in the morning. So the price of coffee will go up because you cannot make more in the US. So this will for sure be inflation unless Americans want to stop drinking coffee. That's also a choice and you just drink tea. Then he said the tariffs I can also use, or maybe I can use them to gain more power, to more influence in the world. But a lot of the supposedly friends, the friends of the US have been tariffed, but some enemies didn't get any tariffs, like Russia, Belarus, North Korea, Cuba, no tariffs at all. But strategic partners like Japan got pretty high tariff, or NATO partners got high tariffs. Japan is now talking to China, their enemy, kind of their arch rival from 80 years ago. They are now having meetings and talking to each other. Well, maybe you need Japan if China is your enemy. So it makes no sense what he's doing. Even Israel, one of the biggest allies and friends of the US, gets 17%, while Iran, the enemy of Israel and the US, only 10%. Islands with no people got even tariffs, where only penguins live. And you can use tariffs, you can use it strategically against China, but then why are you also giving them to your friends? And a big reason is that this lovely chart there in the corner, he just used a simple formula to come up with all those percentages. It is the trade deficit with a country divided by the total imports from that country divided by 2. That's how he came up with all those percentages. So it's not even a proper policy behind it. It's not targeted. It's not thought out. It's like, how can we do the best? Okay, maybe keep coffee cheap, but we want to kind of destroy China. So we're going to target these specific products, but we still want to give Americans cheap coffee and bananas. So that we're not going to hurt. He didn't think about it at all. Just a formula. Makes no sense. Very, very dumb. And to maybe sum everything up, let's look at Lesotho. Poor Lesotho. Lesotho is a country next to South Africa, and Trump charged it the most. He said Lesotho charges us 99% and the reciprocal tariff is 50%. Why 99%? Because Lesotho is a very poor country. They only export to the US, but they don't buy anything from the US. So that's how you get 99%. They export mainly jeans, like Levi's jeans and other garment and textile. So Levi's makes those cheap jeans, can then sell them in the US market. But now they need to pay 50% tariffs. The result will be very expensive jeans, so more inflation for America. And poor Lesotho will be economically destroyed by this because the US is a big trading partner. So Trump said, it's very unfair. But is it unfair? Don't you want to give Americans cheap jeans and you help Lesotho develop as a country and then maybe later they start to buy American products? Again, no sense. So why are these trades, all these tariffs, why is it very dumb? It's just no proper policy. It's just a simple formula. There's no thoughts behind it. There's no differentiation between different countries based on what you want to achieve, what is good for American people. He just randomly put those numbers in the formula and came up with them. Also, he said, I will lower prices on day one. This is going to achieve the opposite on the short term. There will be high inflation and he's going to crash his own economy. So people will really suffer, and especially poor people, middle class people, because they don't have the money to cover high cost. On the long term, maybe it could partly work, maybe. But then it's a huge sacrifice. You need at least 4 to 5 years to move all those factories, set up all of that, and then it's still gonna be hard to make it work with, making jeans in America, way higher labor cost, way more expensive jeans, what I just talked about. So it is very dumb, but make up your own mind and let me know what you think of this explanation of my reasons. Maybe you think it's a great idea, but please then explain it in the comments. Do it properly, use arguments, no fighting, let's have a good debate. Thank you for watching and see you next time.